Hello and welcome back. This is the week 10 lecture. So this is kind of a big week for us. Now that we have finished the rhetorical analysis, we are moving on to focus pretty much exclusively on the research paper the rest of the way. So from this point on, it really is research paper, all the time. So we have a couple of other assignments that we'll still need to complete. We have a proposal that's coming up next week, I believe. And then in week 12, we need to submit the finished, complete version of our annotated bibliography. But otherwise, that's it. After those assignments come in, we are simply working on research papers, and really that process starts today because obviously the proposal and the bibliography are directly related and connected to the research paper. So our focus kind of narrows now, and we're finished with pretty much all of our preliminary work. Most of our practice is done, and now it's kind of time for the real thing. So that means we need to start generating content. And that's what week 10 is all about. I actually kind of enjoy this week. I think it's fun, and I think it's really necessary. Even if you've already been thinking about your research topic, and I certainly hope that you have been, even if you've already generated some ideas that you think you might pursue in the research paper, this week is the time to really start getting organized. And this week is the time to start generating material that you can actually use in the research paper. So I always like to use this goofy metaphor when I'm describing the research paper to students and when I'm describing the preparation that is required for the research paper. I like for people to think of a stand-up comedian. Most of us have seen stand-up comedians, at least on TV, or at least we're familiar with them and we know what they do. So imagine for a moment that you are a stand-up comedian and you're preparing for a performance. So typically comedians will be on stage for an hour, maybe 2 hours, and they have to write enough material, enough jokes, to be able to fill up that entire amount of time. Which is pretty obvious, but it's worth thinking about. So if you're going to be on stage for an hour, you need to write enough material to get you through that hour. You don't want to simply write enough material to get you through the first half hour or the first 20 minutes, because then what are you going to do for the rest of your set? I want you to think about the research papers in the same way. What we're doing for the next couple of weeks is we are developing our material. We are preparing. We are writing things down. We are getting ideas on paper. Soon we'll be outlining. So this is all part of our preparation. We are planning for our future performance. And if we don't plan enough, if we don't generate enough material, we're going to come up short in the research paper. And I see it every semester. Students failing to meet the length requirement, students failing to have enough research. Not trying to scare anyone, just a warning that the research paper is hard and it's long. And there's a lot of moving parts. So if we don't treat it with the respect that it deserves, it's going to creep up on us and we're going to struggle. So today we get started with our topoi. We get started with some basic idea generation that will help us. So all of this can be found in the week 10 overview, but I just want to walk you guys through very quickly our 6 topoi, because this stuff is really important and really helpful. So it's critical that we run through these this week, and then we sort of need to stick with them for the next several weeks. So don't be alarmed if you've never heard of this term or if you don't know what it means. This is a term handed down to us by Aristotle and the ancient Greeks. And one thing we'll notice, I think we mentioned this when we were talking about the logical, emotional, and ethical appeals, those artistic appeals. I mentioned that, a lot of the key concepts surrounding rhetoric, which is basically just the art of persuasion, all of these techniques associated with argumentative writing and argumentative speech, a lot of them really haven't changed that much since ancient Greece. That's how we know this stuff works, because it's been around for a very long time. So Aristotle came up with these topoi. And the word topoi is simply ancient Greek for places. Places. So the way Aristotle sort of thought about these are places in the mind. And I know that's kind of abstract, but basically these are like logical shortcuts. These are ways to develop logical arguments. That's the whole idea. So the whole idea with the topoi is, they help you to access information that might later be useful when you're developing an original argument. So Aristotle actually had two different categories of topoi. One category he calls the general topoi, the general places of the mind, and then he also has a group called the more specific topoi. We're not going to worry about the specific stuff. We are just using his general topoi, which can really be used to develop arguments about virtually any topic. That's why it's good for us, because we are all writing about different things. So we only have 6. We're only going to use 6 of his topoi. He has many more, but we're going to keep it simple and use the 6 most helpful, at least what I think are the 6 most helpful. So basically these topoi are arranged, as you can see, they are arranged as series of questions, sort of organized around some governing concept, okay? So the idea is you need to answer the questions for each topoi, right? And you'll just write down your answers in a very informal way. But that's how you start to develop the info that you need. So you answer the questions, and that will allow you to generate some of this key information. And then, this is a very important step, you'll take that sort of raw info that you've written down as answers to the questions, and you will transform that info, you will turn it into a series of original, debatable claims. So that's a really big word for us today, claims, right? We need to distinguish between debatable claims and statements of fact. This is a really important distinction for the argumentative research papers. So a statement of fact is simply a clear and obvious statement that we really cannot argue about. At least it would not be productive to argue about it. So, for example, right now I could tell you that I am recording this lecture in my home. That's a true statement. Now, some of you might not believe me. Some of you might think that I'm in somebody else's home, or that perhaps I'm in a place that you can't identify. You might think that. We could argue about it, conceivably, but ultimately I can prove it very easily, and most people would just take me at my word, because I'm clearly in an apartment or a house. It would be strange if this apartment or house belonged to somebody else and they were letting me record at 6 a.m. So that's not worth arguing about. I'm at home. That's just a statement of fact. We can't have a debate about that. However, if I said something like recording lectures at home is better than recording lectures on campus, it's better for me as the instructor, and it's better for my students. My home recorded lectures are more effective for my students. Okay, now that is a debatable claim. Not everybody is going to agree with that. Many of my colleagues will not agree with that. Not everybody thinks recording at home is effective. Now, of course, there's evidence on both sides. There's many different positions that we can take, but now we're having a debate. If I simply tell you I'm sitting at home, that's not a debate. If I tell you recording at home is not as effective as recording on campus, or it's more effective, now I'm making a debatable claim that I can actually turn into an argument. And then you, as my potential opponent, you could take the opposite position and argue for that. So that's the key distinction, right? Claims are by definition debatable. which means that not everyone will agree with the claim. Whereas a statement of fact, even though some people might not agree with it, a statement of fact is not going to lead to a productive argument. Because even if some people don't believe your statement of fact, it's so easy to prove. It's so easy to kind of reach a conclusion that we're just not going to go anywhere with it. So this might seem obvious, but one of the biggest sort of pitfalls for students when they're working on research papers is that they don't develop enough original, debatable claims. They lean too heavily on statements of fact, which are going to be necessary. We're going to have statements of fact in our research paper. We're bound to, but that can't be all that we have. We have to move into a debatable argument that is our own. We have to make it our own. So we're going to be working on this for the next few weeks, but the topoi will help us get started because the topoi will help us to develop original claims. So let's just start to run through these, and I think you'll see pretty quickly how they work. So again, first we answer the questions connected to each topoi, and then we turn our answers into original debatable claims. So some of these topoi are going to work better for you than others, and each individual is different. So some of us might really like certain topoi and find them really helpful. Others might prefer different topoi. It's fine. That's why we're going to do 6. Out of these 6, everybody should be able to find at least a couple that are effective and really working for you. So let's start with topic of definition. Okay, so we have 6 different topics, right? One for each topoi. And basically each topoi is asking you to think about sort of a different area, and you're answering questions about that area. So we start with definition, okay? What larger group or category contains your topic? So we're kind of starting on a general level here. Okay, but of course we're thinking about our own research topics. I don't have any more examples. I don't have any more sample sources to give you guys for in-class practice. We're done with that, okay? So at this point, you are working with your own topics, your own sources. We are starting on our own research papers. Please be clear about that. We're not using any of our previous examples. So the topic of definition is asking you really to just think about kind of what larger category your topic fits into. And this is pretty easy, right? So what's the sort of larger category that you could fit your topic into? Does it fall under sort of science and technology? Does it fall under healthcare or medicine? Does it fall within education? Does it pertain to sports? Does it pertain to certain social issues? Again, we're sort of starting out on a broad level, but how does your topic fit in to a larger category or a larger group? And then start thinking about the characteristics of that group. So we're basically trying to define our topic. Where does it fit? How would we describe it, right? So if, let's say, your topic in your mind falls under healthcare and medicine, well, what are some characteristics of that larger category of healthcare and medicine? What are some characteristics of the topics that can be found there? Again, sort of speaking generally, right? What are some basic characteristics of that larger group, and how does your particular topic fit into that group? So just think about your topic in those terms. So first, write down your key info by simply answering the questions that you see for definition. And then once you have some info, you can start turning it into claims. So the idea here is to be able to have at least one original claim per topoi. So for definition, we'll end up with a claim, an original claim written by us based on defining our topic and sort of categorizing or classifying our topic. And we may or may not end up using that claim. It might be helpful, it might appear on our research paper, or it might not. Even if it never appears in any of our written work, it's still useful because we're thinking about it, and it's helping us to kind of figure out what we're going to do later on. So hopefully this makes sense. So that's definition. Then we move on to the second topoi, which is all about division. And this is basically analysis. I don't know if I've defined analysis for you guys, but all the word really means is to break something down into its individual parts in order to better understand how that thing works. So that's essentially what we're doing here. The question is, what individual parts or elements make up your topic? Okay, so how do all the different parts relate to one another? This is a kind of a way for you to start analyzing your topic a little more. Break it down into its constituent parts and then examine those parts. So let me give you an example. I had a student recently working on childhood obesity. That was her topic. Okay, so how did she break that topic down into individual parts? Well, it was actually pretty easy. She came up with several different parts that went into the larger topic. Number one was nutrition. Number two was exercise. I believe number three had to do with like serving sizes in restaurants. So those are the only three I can remember. She had more, but I can't remember the others. But she was talking about nutrition just in terms of like the food that we normally eat. She was talking about exercise mainly for kids in relation to like school. Like how much time do kids get to exercise in school, like between recess and PE or whatever, and then serving sizes. So those were three kind of individual areas or elements that she could explore. And they all sort of contributed to her larger topic. So this is a really useful topoi for most people because you're going to need to break your topic down into smaller elements in order to have enough to say about the topic, about your argument concerning that topic, in order to fill up the research paper length requirement. So it's really good to start breaking your topic down into individual parts or elements. And there's no one way to do this, but again, use that example. If your topic is childhood obesity, individual parts could be nutrition, exercise, serving sizes, crash dieting, whatever, right? That's how you do the second topoi. So again, write down some of your answers to the two questions. Not only what are the individual parts, but also how are those individual parts working together. So write down your answers and then try to develop a claim out of those answers. All right, moving along. Topoi number 3, similarities and differences. So this is a basic compare and contrast maneuver for number 3. So how similar is your topic to other things? Start comparing your topic to other topics that might be somewhat similar. But then also start thinking about how it's different from some of those topics that it does share certain things in common with. Okay, so we're looking at comparison and contrast, right? What can you compare and contrast your topic to? So again, write down your answers to those questions and then develop a claim out of those answers. Then we move on to cause and effect, which I find also to be helpful for most people. Start placing your topic within what we call a causal chain, or a chain of basically cause and effect relationships, right? So is there a particular thing that causes your topic? So I've had people in the recent past do topics such as, wildfires in California. There's some pretty clear causes that lead to that particular problem. So a lot of people want to focus on causes, right? What's making this issue happen? What's causing it? What's creating it? Okay, so you can focus on causes. You can also focus on effects, right? What effects does your topic create, right? Because that's what we mean by a causal relationship. Causes lead to effects, and then those effects might serve as causes for more effects. So it's like, you're finding these links in a chain, and the chain keeps going, potentially for infinity. So think about the causes that create your topic or make your topic happen, and then think about the effects that your topic ultimately leads to. Okay, what's more important for you? The causes that come earlier or the effects that come later? You might want to talk about both, or you might want to focus on one or the other. And then number 5 is negation. This is kind of a weird one, but it's a useful thought experiment, right? Just ask yourself, what would happen if my topic stopped or was negated or was done away with in some way? What would happen? Would the effects be good? Would that be a positive change? Or if we negated the topic, would there be problems that came from that? Okay, that's a pretty easy one. And then finally, topic of substitution. If we replaced your topic with something else that might be similar but different, what would happen? Again, just kind of like a thought experiment. What would be the significance of that substitution? Would things get better overall, or would they get worse? So again, write down your answers to the questions. That's your key info, and then generate a claim out of that. So I've shown you the structure and how this works in the overview. So take some time over the course of this week to run through all 6 of our topoi, and by the end, like I said, you should have 6 original claims, 1 for each topoi. Okay? Again, you don't have to use all of that stuff, but you need it all written down. This is how we get started. Okay. So I want to wrap up here. I'm going to keep this lecture brief because this week is mostly about working. It's not really about me talking. But let me go through our 4 sort of major categories that we need to work on for the research paper. Our 4 big areas. We have to develop content or material in each one of these 4 areas in order to eventually be prepared to write our research papers. So we're going to talk about these areas a lot over the next few weeks. So this week is not the last word on these areas, but I want you to start thinking about them. We're not really ready to generate a lot of material for each one, not yet. But after you run through the topoi, you'll be ready to get started. And if you've done some good research, you should already be able to fill in at least the first area. Because the first area is fact. Facts, right? We need to establish some basic facts about our topic. And that's largely where research comes in, okay? So hopefully we've done enough research. We've already learned enough about our topic to be able to sort of, begin generating facts. A lot of the facts are going to eventually appear in the intro paragraph of our research papers, okay? And again, maybe not all the facts that you write down now will find their way into the ultimate research paper, but they're still good to write down. They're still good to know and remember. But also keep in mind, facts can change. Facts are not always self-explanatory, and they're not always permanent. They can change over time as we learn new things, as new research is conducted, new studies, new technology, new science. So facts are not always constant. But typically we can agree on at least certain basic facts. And you'll need to establish some of those basic facts about your topic sort of up front. Again, early in your research paper. So the facts are usually pretty easy because you're not necessarily generating these yourselves. You're finding these. A lot of the facts you should have already found through research. So you want to start jotting down what you think are some of the most important facts. And again, what we mean by fact is a frequently repeated idea that most, though not all, most people would agree on. Okay, so you can start generating some facts. That's your first group or area that you need to work on. Number 2 is definition. We need to start writing definitions. Okay, and I want us to have kind of an expansive idea of what definitions are. So we don't strictly have to define the meaning of words or terms or concepts, although we are going to be doing those things. We can also just use our definition section to help us provide all necessary background information. Okay, so this kind of goes along with facts, but it's a little different. Okay, so it is a different category, but it often follows the facts. So most of us will end up writing what we call definition paragraphs in our research papers. These usually appear right after the intro paragraph and right before the beginning of our body paragraphs. And all a definition paragraph is basically background info, but it also contains important definitions for terms or concepts that a lot of readers might not be familiar with. So the definition paragraph is really essential for anyone working with a topic related to science, technology, perhaps medicine, any topic that has a lot of jargon, a lot of specialized language, a lot of terms that might be unfamiliar to people who don't work in that field or don't go to school for that particular thing. So if you're working with topics like that, you're going to have to spend some time providing definitions. It's unavoidable because people like me aren't going to understand everything about your topic, right? This is also, just to, off the top of my head, remembering the summaries and the recent research journals that I've graded, some of us are working with topics related to cars, like electric cars or whatever, the transition from, gas to electric. I don't know anything about cars. So again, if you're working with a topic like that, with a lot of specialized knowledge that mechanics know, engineers know, but regular people might not, you have to provide definitions for dummies like me. All right, now if you're working with a topic that kind of is a little bit more generally understood, you might not have to spend as much time defining words, but you'll still need to provide background info. Where again, you're continuing to sort of lay out what we know, what's already been established about the topic, and also what your readers need to know about the topic in order for your argument to make sense. But remember, facts and definitions aren't directly tied to your argument. They might be in certain ways, but most of your facts will appear in your intro paragraph. And then you'll have a definition paragraph that comes right after the intro. And then after the definition paragraph, you start on your bodies, and it's in your bodies where you're really making your argument. So that takes us to our third section, which we call quality or support. And basically, this is the biggest, most substantial section because this section consists of most of your body paragraphs. So this is where you are actually making your argument. Okay, so this is the bulk of your paper, and obviously this is where most of our attention needs to go. But kind of keep in mind what your argument really is. It's largely based on qualities associated with your topic. You're kind of telling us if certain things are good or bad. These are qualities of the thing, right? Are they good or are they bad? Are they productive or are they unproductive? Are they moral or immoral? Do we need to do them or do we not need to do them? These are all questions about quality. You're talking about characteristics or qualities of your topic and the individual parts that go into that larger topic. So hopefully that's not confusing. Just think about quality and support as your argument. And the support part comes in because you have to offer evidence and, reasons to support all of your original claims. Remember, an original claim, it can't do very much by itself, right? An original claim needs support. It needs reasons. It needs evidence. Right? So in the quality section, that's where you can hit us with your reasons, with your evidence, with most of your content. So we're not ready to fill in all of our quality and support section. That's okay. We have, 5 or 6 weeks to do all of this. But you might be ready to start working on facts and definitions. Okay, and we can wait a little bit on the quality / support. And then the final section is policy, right? And we're not ready for policy yet, but basically the policy recommendation will come near the end of your research paper. And this is basically your solution to the problem at hand. Okay, what are we going to do about your issue, your topic? Okay, what are we going to do and who's going to do it? So you have to have a very specific, detailed policy recommendation where you're not just outlining a course of action. Okay, in order to fix this problem, regular people can do A, B, and C. Okay, great. But notice we're not just recommending what to do. We're recommending who should do it. Whose responsibility is it? Does it fall on regular people, or does the solution ultimately lie with politicians? Do we need new laws? Do we need new, court decisions? I mean, who ultimately is responsible for making the change? Who's responsible for carrying out the solution? So ultimately, we all must have a solution. We must have a policy, a way to make improvements or a way to fix the problem that we're identifying. Because a lot of our topics can also be thought of as issues or problems confronting our society at the present moment. So if you're identifying a problem, ultimately you want to fix that problem, or you at least want to recommend a possible solution to that problem. But again, we're probably not ready to really do our policy yet, so that's fine. Just make some space for it, and maybe 2 weeks from now, 3 weeks from now, we can start filling in those second categories, quality and policy. For now, work on facts and definition, and run through the topoi, complete the research journal, and I'll see you next week.